Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Rappahannock, where truth rises like a shimmering tide and each seeker is invited to wade in freely, soul first. My name is Jeff. I'll be guiding you through today's service portion of this belated Beltane Sunday service, as Marlie Avant invites us up to explore how divine wisdom and sacred feminine can reshape our understanding of everyday life. Through story, gentle theology, she invites us to see wisdom not as abstract doctrine, but as a living river, moving through courage, through tenderness, and through quiet places where meaning blooms. A warm, heartfelt welcome to first-time visitors. We're delighted to have you here. Please join us after service for coffee, snacks, and conversations. You'll find this week's announcements in this bulletin. We light this chalice to honor the holy wellspring within, the feminine flow that moves like water through days, softening what is rigid, brightening what is hidden, calling forth creation and all its tender courage. May this flame remind us that wisdom is not a distant star, but a living pulse, a river of intuition, artistry, a renewal flowing through every seeker who dares to listen. As the chalice glows, we open the sacred current, the one that whispers, become, bloom. I invite each of you to watch the feminine sway of the candle flames as we meditate on the last stanza from the song of Mahamudra, the Ganges River. The illumination from an oil lamp lights the room instantly, even if it's been dark for eons. Mind is boundless radiance. How can the slightest darkness remain in a room of daily perception? But one who clings to mental processes cannot awaken to the radiance of mind. Strenuously seeking truth by investigating the concentration, one will never appreciate the unthinkable simplicity and bliss that abide at the core. To uncover this fertile ground, cut through the roots of complexity with sharp gaze and naked awareness, remaining entirely at peace and content. You need not expend great effort nor store up extensive spiritual powers. Remain in the flow of sheer awareness. Mahamudra neither accepts nor rejects current energy, internal or external, since the ground of consciousness is never born in any realm of being. Nothing can add or subtract from it. Nothing can obstruct or stain it. When awareness rests here, the appearance of division and conflict disappear into original reality. The twin emotions of anxiety and arrogance vanish into the void from which they came. Supreme knowing knows no separate subject or object. Supreme action acts resourcefully, without an array of instruments. Supreme attainment attains the goal without past, future, or present. The dedicated practitioner experiences the spiritual way as a turbulent mountain stream, tumbling dangerously among boulders. When maturity is reached, the river flows smoothly and patiently with the powerful sweeps of the Ganges. Empty into the ocean of Mahamudra, the water becomes an ever-expanding light that pours into great clear light without direction, destination, division, distinction, or description. You probably all know Marlie by now. Marlie Avant serves as lay minister here. She has a deep passion for exploring common threads that run through Eastern and Western religions and earth-honoring wisdoms of Indigenous traditions. Her ministry grows from heart-centered desire to weave these diverse streams into a more compassionate, exclusive, and healing spiritual life for all. No need for a towel, but prepare to be drenched by Marlie's wisdom flows through you like water.
Thank you, Jeff. So this reading that I'm about to give is adapted from Anne Baring, who writes about the separation of the masculine and feminine archetypes in Western civilization. As we listen, I invite us to hear masculine and feminine not as men versus women, but as energies and ways of knowing that live within each one of us. And bearing writes that we have lived for centuries in a world governed largely by the masculine archetype, without the feminine archetype to balance it, with no sacred marriage between them. As a result, world culture and the human psyche have fallen out of alignment with the earth, with the sacredness of life, and with the deeper wisdom of the soul. The feminine stands for the soul, for the heart, for compassion and justice and values which protect and serve life. This wisdom is reflected in a statement from the Council of the Indigenous People of North America. As we know, all life is sacred. We come into life as sacred beings. When we abuse the sacredness of life, we affect all creation. Once long ago, the world was experienced as alive with spirit. Nature was part of a sacred cosmic whole. Indigenous people have kept alive this awareness of the sacredness of nature and our kinship with creation, and we are keeping it alive. Don't minimalize that. A new vision is struggling to be born, a vision of an intelligent, living, interconnected universe, and of humanity as a part of a sacred web of life. Unitarians understand this. The question before us is not whether the masculine or the feminine should prevail. The question is whether they can be reunited. Can strength and tenderness act together? Can action and receptivity come into balance? Can wisdom and love move as one? Can either and or be wedded to the sacred and, A-N-D? This word is sacred. Have you noticed, worn thin these days, as if the world burning is taking our nervous system with it? I know my nervous system is responding to all that's happening, and I'm sure yours are too. There's a particular kind of loneliness that I hear from many people's stories. It doesn't always sound like loneliness. It can sound like restlessness, burnout, anxiety, or an unnamed hunger for what it is you don't really know. Underneath it, it often turns out to be this: a life formed almost entirely by the masculine, with very little room for the feminine. For centuries, in church, politics, and culture, we have been handed images of strength that look like control, certainty, conquest, achievement. Even our pictures of God have leaned in that direction: a distant father, a conquering king, a judge on a throne. And I want to say clearly, this is not a judgment on men. Men too carry the inner feminine. Men too have been wounded by her repression. When the feminine is pushed away, the masculine does not become stronger. It becomes armored. It loses tenderness, receptivity, rational wisdom, and the capacity to rest in being rather than doing. So when the feminine begins to heal, the masculine heals too. Both are restored to their sacred balance. This is simply a recognition that something soft and wise, intuitive, and deeply alive has been pushed to the margins in our culture. Many of us were taught, quietly or loudly, that the feminine weakens rather than balances, that receptivity is passivity, that tenderness is naive. And yet, in the hidden places of our lives, in grief, in illness, in parenting, in the garden, in the middle of the night, another knowing keeps trying to speak to us. A knowing that moves more like water than a sword, more like a seed taking root than like a battle being won. Today, I want to explore how three great streams of wisdom, Sophia, Mary Magdalene, and the Taoist way, can help restore what has been missing and bring us back towards balance. Before I go further, I want to say how I am using the name Sophia. I am speaking of her as an archetype of wisdom, a living symbol of the divine feminine that can awaken in each of us. You don't have to believe in Sophia as a separate being to feel her presence. You might experience her as a deep knowing, a shift in perception, a fierce love for what is true, a longing for wholeness. She is breathing remembrance back into this time of upheaval and chaos. Before I ever knew her name, I think Sophia was already moving through me. I was born with creativity in my blood. And for as long as I could remember, I have felt quietly guided by an invisible, loving source, not so much in words. In fact, I couldn't even put a label to it. It was a feeling tone, a sense of spaciousness that knew how to move through life, how to keep turning the soil towards beauty and harmony. It just felt like an all-embracing presence, a kind of intelligence that was not particularly valued in the culture around me. Late in Thomas Merton's spiritual journey, he turned towards Sophia. He wrote a beautiful poem, Hagia Sophia, it's in your bulletin, Holy Wisdom, and it begins like a spring rising from hidden ground. There is in all visible things an invisible fecundity, a dimmed light, a meek namelessness, a hidden wholeness. This mysterious unity and integrity is wisdom, the mother of all, natura naturans. There is in all things an inexhaustible sweetness and purity, a silence that is font of action and joy. What then can Sophia offer us? When we speak of wisdom today, we often mean knowledge. We mean the lessons life has taught us, the hard-won understanding gathered from our mistakes, our losses, and our loves. We hope wisdom will help us meet the questions of daily life: what to do, what to say, how to respond, how to choose. But knowledge alone does not make us wise. Wisdom is something deeper, something more like a river beneath the river, a source. What if wisdom is not simply a virtue we acquire, but a living current we enter? What if she is the hidden spring of life itself, the fountain of joy, goodness, mercy, and peace? What if she is not merely something we possess, but a sacred presence always inviting us to listen? to listen beneath the noise, to listen beneath our fear, to listen to what is life-giving, to listen for what wants to be born. If we allowed wisdom to become our guide, how might our lives change? Might we become more porous to wonder, more faithful to love, more willing to create peace where there has been hardness? Might we find ourselves drawn toward what heals, what nourishes, what makes whole? Perhaps we would find that wisdom has been whispering from the beginning of time. The Indigenous know this. In the first light, in the breath of trees, in the silence before speech, in the ache that turns us towards compassion, in the creative impulse that asks us to make beauty from brokenness. Sophia has been with us since the beginning of time. She waits not far away, but as near as our breath. She waits for us to invite her in, to let her teach us how to deepen into life, to let her lead us toward love, to let her make us wise, not by filling us with certainty, but by opening us to the inexhaustible sweetness at the heart of all things. Sophia's wisdom is not rigid. It does not arrive as a commandment carved in stone. It moves more like water. It flows through the inner life, finding hidden places, softening what has grown hard, wearing away the stones of fear and forgetfulness. It returns to us to the source, and yet, along the way, it delights in the journey itself. This is the ground from which creativity rises, not from effort alone, not from striving, not from the mind's need to master, but from a soul more porous to the sacred, a soul willing to receive, a soul willing to be moved. Sophia awakens that movement in us. She does not merely give us answers. She brings us alive. She stirs imagination, opens the heart, and reminds us that wisdom is not dry knowledge, but living water. It is the sweetness beneath all things, the hidden wholeness, the quiet spring from which love, beauty, mercy, and peace continue to flow. When Sophia comes alive in us, we begin to see differently. The world becomes more transparent to grace. Our lives become vessels of creativity. And we remember that we too are part of the great river, flowing from source toward the source and blessed by every shimmering bend along the way. But rivers also know where the flow has been blocked. They know where the waters have been diverted, where the living current has been forced underground. And so if Sophia has always been here, why do so many of us feel such a deep absence? As Christianity became more tightly bound to empire and hierarchy, her voice was pushed aside, her stories silenced, her images hidden, to make room for a very narrow, mostly masculine picture of God and power. A wisdom that was fluid, rational, embodied, and deeply alive was quietly replaced with rules, polarized thinking, and the need to control. The earth has suffered under that imbalance. Women have suffered. Men have suffered. Children have suffered. The whole web of life has suffered. And yet, I do not believe Sophia has given up on us. I sense her rising again in our time, in the grief we feel for the earth, in the exhaustion with domination and either-or thinking, in our longing for a way of life that feels more like a circle than a ladder. She is breathing remembrance back into humanity. But she does not only comfort us. Sometimes she unsettles us. Sometimes the river rises not to destroy, but to carry away what no longer sustains us. Can you feel that happening now? Here's the paradox. When Sophia returns, it rarely feels like a return. It can feel like collapse, chaos, and disruption, because wisdom does not always show up as comfort. Wisdom shows up as truth, and truth burns away illusions, especially the comforting ones. Most people think the divine feminine means gentleness, flow, and beauty, and it does. But Sophia is not only tenderness, she is piercing intelligence. She is the voice in us that says, this is false, this is shallow, this is not life. A time of sobriety enters. Aren't we all feeling it? The end of pretending, the inability to tolerate a lie. The soul becomes allergic to the superficial, which we are seeing so much of now. We may begin to lose interest in things that once impressed us. Not because we're better than anyone else, but because Sophia is drawing us away from distraction and toward depth. The world keeps us chasing stimulation. But when Sophia stirs within us, we begin to crave something deeper: truth, presence, meaning, and a love that is real. This is why so many people are feeling disoriented right now. Sophia does not return to preserve the old self. She returns to restore the real self. And restoration often begins with dismantling. We outgrow roles, we remove masks, we begin to reveal our true essence. How do we prepare for this? Perhaps by creating one small pocket of silence each day. No music, no affirmations, no breathing, breath counting, just one question gently held. What is true right now beneath my thoughts? Not what do I wish were true, not what I am performing, not what will make people approve of me, but what is true? Sophia does not usually speak as a loud voice. She comes as a quiet, felt sense of recognition. Then comes discernment. We might ask, not in shame, but in honesty, where am I pretending? Where am I performing? Where am I agreeing with what I do not respect? And then, what am I not seeing clearly? What is the next faithful step? Gradually, we become aligned with our own inner truth. So if Sophia is a circling wisdom at the heart of things, what does she look like in human life? One of the places I see her most clearly is in Mary Magdalene. Mary is remembered as the apostle to the apostles, the first witness and first messenger of the resurrection. But she is also, in some of the early Christian imaginations, a bearer of Sophia's own energy, embodying a relational, intuitive, steadfast wisdom that stands beside Jesus' teaching, not beneath it. I think of her there in the garden at dawn, weeping Mistaking Jesus for the gardener, on the surface it looks like failure to recognize him, but on another level it is as if wisdom in human form is standing before the sower, the receptive soil, meeting the seed. Mary's heart becomes the place where Logos and Sophia, word and wisdom, meet and recognize one another. Some of the early Christians had a word for this kind of awakening. They called it gnosis. Not secret information for a chosen few, but a heart knowing, an inner recognition of the presence that no one could give or take away. The tradition has language for this. Logos and Sophia, divine masculine and divine feminine, new currents come together in a single human heart. Her listening, receptive, deeply attuned wisdom hears her name, and the living word meets her there. The second coming is not spectacle. It is the quiet union inside a person, this inner marriage to make us whole. When this inner marriage begins to take shape in us, it shows up in very ordinary ways, in how we make decisions, in how we speak the truth without losing our tenderness, in how we balance doing and listening, structure and flow, clarity and compassion, so that our days become a place where wisdom and love move together instead of pulling us apart. So again, the questions we need to ponder now are, can strength and tenderness act together? Can action and receptivity come into balance? Can wisdom and love move as one? Can either or be wedded to the sacred and? Let these questions rest in you. The Taoist sages have a word for this way of living, the spacious embrace that holds opposites without forcing them apart. They call it the Tao, the way. The Tao moves like water, not like a hammer. It's flexible, yet strong, flowing, but still, finding the low places without effort, slowly reshaping even stone without losing its own nature. It invites us to live with that same kind of intelligent softness, to act, yes, but to act from alignment rather than strain, to trust that we belong to a larger current that knows how to carry us. In everyday life, it might look like pausing in a conflict long enough to listen beneath the words, so our response can be clear without being harsh. It might look like loosening our grip on a plan that is not working and letting a quieter, wiser way forward show itself. Little by little, this inner union begins to feel less like a tug of war and more like a spacious embrace of grace. The old either-or softens. We find ourselves moving through what used to feel like sharp divisions with a new kind of fluidity, where strength and softness, clarity and compassion, action and surrender are all allowed to belong. Sophia gives us a name for the river. Mary shows us that river flowing in a human life. The Tao describes how the river moves, like water, balancing what seems opposite without losing itself. That's key, without losing itself. David White wrote, and it's one of my favorite sayings, "I would love to live like a river flows, carried by the surprise of its own unfolding. Life unfolds. It doesn't have to be manipulated and controlled. And here I want to return to that fierce face of wisdom, because the holy river of love does not only comfort us, it does not only sparkle in visions and poetry, it also seeps into the tiniest cracks of daily life. How we speak, how we spend, how we listen, how we set boundaries, how we respond to harm. To walk the Tao of everyday life is to keep returning to this simple question: what is the next small, honest step that aligns me with the flowing river of life? Sometimes that step will look like rest and gentleness. Sometimes it will look like finally setting a boundary, making a phone call, speaking the truth, standing with someone who is being harmed. Both are part of the way. The feminine is not only softness, the masculine is not only strength. When they are healed, they become partners. The feminine teaches the masculine how to soften without collapsing. This is important. The masculine teaches the feminine how to act without losing heart. Together they create a wholeness that neither can create alone. And now we circle back to that particular kind of loneliness I named at the beginning, the longing of the feminine to bring balance to the masculine, and for both to be healed by that reunion. May we walk the Tao of everyday living, letting Sophia's river move in us in small, human, simple ways. This is not small. The sages, the indigenous people, the saints knew this. May our listening be a little deeper. May our boundaries be a little clearer. May our courage be a little more awake in the places we actually live. May you feel her river moving through your ordinary days, in the kindness you offer yourself, in the truth that you dare to speak, in the boundary you finally set, and in the small, faithful step you take for the earth and for one another. May your soul be made porous to the sacred. May your soul be made porous to the sacred, willing to receive, willing to be moved. We are moved so that we may move, not pushed, not shamed, not driven by guilt, moved by compassion, moved by grief, moved by gratitude, moved by beauty, moved by the sight of people helping one another, moved by elders who have carried the work and are now facing their own challenges with grace, moved by those who are brave enough to ask for help, moved by the younger generation and the 7 generations to come, moved by the sacred thread connecting us in this beautiful web of life. Let yourself be moved. From this movement, something can be offered. Not everything, not more than we can bear, but something real. We are not called to serve depletion. We are called to serve when our hearts are moved. And when the heart is truly moved, the Tao flows like a river. And the Spirit begins to take forms in ways we can't even imagine. where wisdom and love create a wholeness that neither could create alone. Be moved, for as you're moved, that is the river speaking to you. Don't be pulled into this false fight. People need, children need us to be grounded, to be present, to be dreaming a future that is better for them. And so it is. Thank you.
So if Sophia is pounding at the back of your mind to speak your truth, or you just want to congratulate Marlie on shedding some wisdom, please raise your hand and speak it now.
Marlie, as I was listening to you, part of me is thinking, we're living in an awful world. We do need to be doing something about it. We each have our own inner struggles that we're going through. And how in the world do I find from there, get over here to Sophia and that beautiful world that you designed? And it's like, where do I find that? And yet what you did at the end, this was a brilliant talk. What you did was you brought it back to where we are and answered my question. But if you want to answer it better, please do.
No, no, there's no better here, and thank you for that. And you know, it is what we wrestle with. But the truth is, can we really constructively help another person when we are in continual angst? How do we create when we are in someone else's story all the time? So the divine feminine, Sophia, the Taoist, would say, come back to the river of yourself, ground in that, ask the right questions, and then move from that. And you will feel when it's natural to be moved. When you're moved solely, you know, you can be moved with anger, or you can be moved with wisdom. And I'll tell you, it's the wisdom that's going to get us through these times. And the kind of wisdom I was talking about, not just the knowledge wisdom. Because a lot of what we think we know is going to be falling apart. So we need to anchor in to something deeper.
We do have, I was just listening coming over the river. The river usually gives me peace when I'm running late. But today, unfortunately, I was listening to Velshi on the radio and listening to how abortion is being smashed way beyond Roe v. Wade. And we're moving into, all that crap. And I got sucked into that. But I can still be sucked into that with Sophia.
Yes.
Water flowing,
Yes. She can
rather
hold
with the
polarity.
anger and the angst, because that's all going to happen.
Yes, it is.
We just have to learn how to be stable within it.
And how will you serve this as it's happening? Will you serve it as one of the frantic people that need help? Will you serve it, that's the question we have to ask. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I have to deepen something so profoundly within myself that I can be present for others as they need me. Mm-hmm. That's where I will serve, because this is happening. And Sophia, as I said, is also part of that disruption, because she's taking away what no longer serves us. And we're seeing this. We're seeing systems collapse that are no longer serving us. So instead of getting lost in that, can we walk through this with a new vision? And it's not our head vision. What is our heart? What is it showing us? What do the children, what do they want for the next 7 generations? What will serve them? And we stay fast with that, and we speak our truth around that. And we can say no to that other, but it can't overtake us to where we're not functioning.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tons.
Well, you know, we're doing this type of work. We just need to be honored for it and really live it, you know, really live it.
So I was really happy with the river theme today. And Jeff, I loved what you said about us all being tributaries to the greater cause. That really touched me. At my cabin, there's a spring that comes out of the ground, and everything's wet around it, and then it goes back underground, but it's been marked where the stream is. And right across a road is a creek that goes to the big river. So, you know, that little bit of water, it's like a wet spot, but it's going into the rivers that go down to the Chesapeake Bay. And I'm sure any of you have been up and seen the beginnings of the Rappahannock or the James or the other major rivers here, and they're narrow and they're fast, and they, you know, but the same river down here is wide and slow and relaxing. And it's kind of our lives. Like we start off really fast and impulsive, and then we learn to enjoy everything. But it's the same water, and it's just amazing how much water goes through everywhere around us.
Beautifully said, Charlene. And that's something that each little tributary will find its way back to its source. And we are each a tributary. And this journey is to find our way back to this source, particularly in these times.
One of my favorite nursery rhymes when I was a kid and when I became a young adult, it had a completely different meaning that I've kept in my heart ever since, is row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Because when I turned maybe 16 or 17, stay in the middle, stay in your heart, stay out of your head, and all that wisdom will come to you. But once you go on the side, you're trapped in that drama, or you go on the other side, you're trapped in that drama. So. Anybody else have anything?
I just wanted to share part of a song that just reminded me of. It's just the lyrics. It's called Fire by Ayla Nerio. There's a fire and it's burning us apart. I can see you on the other side. There's a fire and we're choosing how we see it. Enemy or set us free. If we let the changes take us. Phoenix fly up from the ashes.
It's so important that we really see one another in these times. That we really look here, and what we're supporting here is something really beautiful. And each one of you are part of that. And rather than seeing the back of heads, we see a little bit of that, but you can see through to the faces of one another. And this is a time where we need to come together in circles, and we're doing that and coming together, truly seeing one another.